To understand why he heard his mother's voice in a song, you first have to understand his mother. You have to understand Gladys. Before the flashbulbs and the gold records and the screaming crowds, there was just the two of them. They were more than mother and son. They were two halves of the same whole. It started in poverty, the kind that grinds you down. They lived in a two-room house in Tupelo, Mississippi. And Elvis was a twin. His brother Jesse Garon was stillborn. That single event shaped everything. For Gladys, it was a devastating loss. It made her cling to her surviving son with everything she had. He wasn't just her child, he was the one who made it. He was a miracle. She poured all her love, all her fear, all her hopes for two boys into this one. Elvis felt it. He grew up knowing he was special, not in an arrogant way, but in a profound, almost spiritual way. He was the one who lived. He carried the weight of that. He and his mother developed a closeness that was almost suffocating to outsiders. They had their own private language, a kind of baby talk they used even when he was a teenager. He called her by pet names. She called him her baby. He never, ever stopped being her baby. She was his entire world. He didn't make a decision without her. When he started getting a little local fame, it wasn't for him. It was for her. He wanted to buy her a big house. He wanted to get her out of that life of hard work and worry. His dream was her dream. Every step he took up the ladder of fame, he was looking back to make sure she was right there with him. And she was. When he bought Graceland, it was for her. He wanted his parents to live in a mansion, to have everything they never had. He wanted her to be the queen of her own castle, but fame is a strange and cruel thing. It gives you everything you want, and takes away the one thing you need: normalcy. Gladys couldn't handle it. She was a simple country woman. She was used to her friends, her community, her quiet life. Suddenly, her home was surrounded by a fence and screaming strangers. She couldn't go to the grocery store. She couldn't chat with neighbors over the fence. She was a prisoner in the palace her son had built for her. The world knew him as a king, but she just knew him as her boy, and she was losing him to that world. She grew lonely. She grew sad. While Elvis was off making movies and touring the country, she was rattling around in that big empty house. The phone calls weren't enough. The gifts weren't enough. She started to drink to pass the time, to numb the loneliness. Her health began to fail. She was taking diet pills, prescribed by a doctor. That didn't help. Her body was breaking down under the strain of a life she was never meant to live. In 1958, everything changed. Elvis was at the absolute peak of his fame. He was the biggest star in the world. And he got drafted. The U.S. Army called, and he had to go. He could have tried to get out of it to get a special assignment playing for the troops. But he didn't. He went in as a regular GI. He was stationed in Texas for basic training. This was the first time he and Gladys had ever been truly separated for a long period. The separation was agony for both of them. While he was in Texas, her health took a sharp turn for the worse. He got emergency leave to fly back to Memphis. He rushed to the hospital. He saw her, frail and sick, a shadow of the vibrant woman he knew. He never left her side. He sat with her, held her hand, talked to her. But it was too late. Gladys Love Presley died of heart failure, complicated by her liver issues. She was only 46 years old. Elvis was destroyed. It wasn't just grief. It was a shattering of his entire universe. The anchor of his life was gone. People who were there said they had never seen such a display of raw, unfiltered sorrow. At her funeral, he threw himself over her casket, crying, pleading. He couldn't accept it. He felt like a part of him had been ripped away. He said, "Everything I have is gone," and he meant it. Shortly after the funeral, he had to ship out to Germany to complete his service. He was a broken man, adrift in a foreign country. The grief didn't lessen. It followed him. It haunted his days and his nights. He was alone in a way he had never been before. His father was there, but it wasn't the same. Gladys was his compass. Without her, he was completely and utterly lost. This is when his spiritual search began. It wasn't a hobby. It was a desperate life or death quest for answers. He needed to know where she had gone. He needed to know if she was okay. He needed to know if he would ever see her again. He couldn't accept that the most powerful connection in his life had just been switched off. He started reading. He read everything he could get his hands on. He started with the Bible, which he had known his whole life, but he read it differently now, searching for clues about the afterlife. Then he branched out. He read books on theosophy, on numerology, on Eastern religions. He devoured books like The Impersonal Life and Autobiography of a Yogi. He talked for hours with anyone who would listen, asking the big questions. What happens when we die? Is there a soul? Can we communicate with those who have passed on? And he wasn't looking for a religion. He was looking for reassurance. He was looking for proof. He was looking for a sign from Gladys. He believed with every fiber of his being that their bond was so strong that not even death could break it. He just needed her to show him. He was like a man standing in a silent room, straining to hear a whisper from the other side. When he came back from the army in 1960, he was a different person. He was more introspective, more serious. The joyful, reckless energy of his early years was still there, but it was now shadowed by a deep melancholy. He threw himself back into his work, making movies and recording music. One night, he was in RCA's Studio B in Nashville. He was recording a gospel album, his Hand in Mine. Gospel music was his first love. It was the music of his childhood, the music he sang with his mother in church. Recording these songs was a deeply personal, spiritual act for him. It was his way of connecting with his roots, with his faith, with her memory. The session was winding down, it was late, the official work was done, but Elvis wasn't ready to stop. He was in a mood, he started playing around at the piano, singing old hymns he remembered. The mood in the studio shifted. The lights were turned down low. It felt less like a recording session and more like a late-night church service. Then he started talking about a song. It was an old one, written years earlier by Artie Glenn. It had been a country hit for Daryl Glenn and a rhythm and blues hit for the Orioles. It wasn't his song, but it was a song he loved. He had a copy of the Orioles' version on his personal jukebox at Graceland. He felt the connection to it. He told the musicians he wanted to try it. They worked out an arrangement right there on the spot. It was simple, sparse. Just his voice, the piano, and the gentle backing vocals of the Jordanaires. He sang it with a kind of quiet intensity. It wasn't the rock and roll Elvis. It wasn't the movie star Elvis. It was the sound of a man alone with his thoughts, with his pain, and with his hope. Now, think about the words he was singing. Think about what they would mean to a man who was desperately searching for a sign from his dead mother. The song begins with a scene of profound sadness. A person is lost, their heart is empty, their soul is weary. They are crying. They feel completely alone in their sorrow. This was Elvis's life since 1958. He was crying on the inside every single day. He felt a hollowness that nothing, not fame, not money, not the adoration of millions could fill. Then, the lyrics say, someone finds this person crying. Someone sees their pain. And this presence offers comfort. It doesn't offer easy answers. It doesn't say the pain will go away. It simply offers a path to peace. It says that a prayer will be answered. It says to have faith. For Elvis, who was this presence, who was seeing him cry in the middle of the night at Graceland. In his mind, it was Gladys. She was the one who had always soothed him, who had always known his pain before he even spoke it. The chorus is where the message truly lands. It's a promise of ultimate comfort. It speaks of finding a happiness that you've never known. It says your soul will be saved. You'll find peace of mind. And then comes the line that changed everything for him, the line that he believed was a direct personal message from his mother, you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. This was the core of his fear. Since her death, he had felt completely alone. He was surrounded by people, by an entourage, by fans, but his soul was solitary. He was walking through life without his guide, his other half. And here, in this song, was a voice telling him the one thing he needed to hear more than anything else in the world. You are not alone, I am still with you. The setting of the song is a chapel, a place of worship, a place of sanctuary. It's where you go when you are lost and need to find your way. It was in the chapel of his own heart, in the quiet moments of his gospel recordings, that he felt this connection. The music was his prayer, and the song was the answer. He finished the mood in the studio was electric. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something special. It was raw, honest, and deeply moving. Elvis was convinced. He told people close to him, like his friend and spiritual confidant Larry Geller, that the song was a message. He didn't say he thought it was a message. He said it was a message from Gladys. He believed she had guided him to that song. He believed that she had used the lyrics of another songwriter to speak directly to him. The words on the page were just a vessel, the meaning, the power, the comfort that came from her. It was a synchronicity so perfect, so tailored to his specific grief and his specific search, that it could not be a coincidence. It was a miracle. This belief gave him immense peace. It was the proof he had been looking for. It confirmed his belief that their bond was eternal. It meant that all his reading, all his searching, had led him to this moment of connection. He wasn't just a grieving son anymore. He was a son who was still in communication with his mother. The story of the song gets even stranger. After that powerful emotional recording session in 1960, the song wasn't released. RCA and his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, didn't know what to do with it. It didn't fit on the gospel album. It wasn't a rock and roll song, it wasn't a movie ballad, it was just this one perfect standalone performance. So they shelved it. It sat in the vaults for 5 years. For 5 years, this intensely personal message remained Elvis's private secret. But he never forgot it. He knew what it meant to him. Finally, in 1965, with a gap in his release schedule, RCA decided to put it out as a single. Nobody expected much. It was an old song, recorded 5 years earlier, in a style that was very different from his current movie soundtracks. The song was a massive hit. It went to #1 in Britain and was a top 5 hit in the United States. It was a huge success all over the world. For Elvis, this must have felt like a second validation. The private message he had received from his mother was now being embraced by the world. The comfort it gave him was now being shared with millions. It proved the power of the song, and by extension, the power of the message he believed it contained. From that point on, his spiritual journey only deepened. He continued to seek knowledge, to believe in a world beyond what we can see, and to feel the presence of his mother guiding him. This conviction shaped the rest of his life. It gave him solace in his darkest moments, but it may have also contributed to his increasing isolation from the real world. If you can communicate with spirits, perhaps the conversations with living people start to seem less important. But at its core, the story is simple. It's about a boy who loved his mother so much that not even death could make him let her go. He was lost in a sea of grief, and he was looking for a lighthouse. He found it in the melody and the words of a simple song. He wasn't just singing about finding peace in a chapel, he was living it. He was a man who felt abandoned, and he heard a voice say, "You'll never walk alone." He believed that voice belonged to his mother. He believed she was comforting him, just as she always had. For Elvis, it wasn't just a great performance, it wasn't just a hit record. It was a letter from heaven. It was Gladys reaching across the veil to tell her baby that everything was going to be alright. The song was Crying in the Chapel.